Okay, this is Mr. Precella. I'm about to solve a system of linear equations using the Gauss-Jordan method, and this is the first time the class has seen this, so we're going to be going through it real slow. So we start off writing the augmented matrix, which we've already defined. So let's see. 7, negative 14, 28, and 42. There's the first row. Second row, negative 5, negative 5, negative 65, and negative 30, and negative 2, 6, negative 1, negative 10. So we're getting the augmented matrix written first. Now, the next thing we're going to do, keep in mind what we want our answer to look like. Ultimately, we want the matrix written like this. Number, 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 and there's the answers. That's what we want. And there's a pattern to go about this. You start off, you get the 1 right here, called the leading 1. To get a leading 1, you usually divide. And then you zero out the column. You'll get a 0 here where this negative 5 is, and a 0 where the negative 2 is. So I'm going to be writing out the steps as I go along. How did we decide you get a 1 right here? What would I need to do to get a 1 right there? Divide by 7. So we could write something like this. Row 1 divided by 7. Or you might see it written 1/7 times row 1 yields a new row 1. I'll put an arrow there. You might see it written with an equal sign also. So instead, let's see. So I'm dividing straight through by 7. We would have a 1, a negative 2, a 4, and a 6. Okay. Now I'll recopy the next 2 rows. 5, 2, 6, negative 1, negative 10. Got to be really careful. This is one of those times when if I make one little mistake, drop one minus or whatever, it's going to just a small mistake will be magnified 1,000,000 times over before it's over. Okay? So we now have a 1 right here. What I want to illustrate is how to zero out the column. How do we get a 0 here and a 0 here? That's that second elementary row operation. Add a multiple of a row that has a leading 1. At this point, the only row that has a leading 1 is this one. We're going to add a multiple of this row to this one in order to get a 0. In other words, this black 1 would need to be what number in order to add it with negative 5 and get a 0? What number would need to go right there, so when I add them together, I get a 0? 5, right. So you're going to multiply row 1 by positive 5. I've just changed the sign. 5 times row 1, add it to row 2 to get a new row 2. So I've wrote out the operation. Let's go ahead and decide on the operation that I'm going to need to get a 0 right here where this pink negative 2 is. Well, the only row that has a leading 1 is still this first row. So we're going to multiply row 1 by what? What would this black 1 need to be so that when I add it to the pink negative 2, I get 0? 2. Okay? So 2 times row 1 plus row 3 is equal to row 3. There's a lot of writing here. I'm recopying the first row before I start zeroing out the column, the first column. So, let's see. Watch my multiplication. 5 times 1 is 5, minus 5, 0. So good, I got a 0 there. 5 times negative 2 is negative 10, minus 5, is that a negative 15? See what I'm doing. I'm multiplying every number in row 1 by 5 and then adding it to the corresponding number in row 2 to get a 0 here. But not to get a 0, to do that operation. We've already got a 0. 5 times 4 is 20, minus 65. What am I about to write right here? Now, if you're following what I'm doing, see if you can tell me what number is going to go right here. 5 times what? 6 minus 30 is 5 times 6 is 30 minus 30. Am I going to have another 0 right there? Okay. 20 short years, we'll be finished. I'm always the optimist. Things could always be worse. It could have been this problem. Can you imagine dividing 3 by 6 over here, the one on the board? That would be sort of messy. At least we don't have any fractions at this point. Okay, so 2 times 1 is 2, minus 2. I've zeroed out that column. I've got the leading one, I've zeroed the column, I still need to fill in these numbers here. 2 times a negative 2 is negative 4, plus 6 is negative 4 plus 6. Is that going to be a 2 right here? What's going to go under the negative 45? Can y'all do that operation in your head? 2 times 4 is 8, minus 1 is 7, then 2 times 6 is 12, minus 10 is 2. So we've finished the first iteration, if you will. We're finished with the X column. Now the pattern, you go column by column, you get the leading one first, then you zero out the column. There's only one correct step to do next. You move over here, are we going to get zeros or ones? You get the 1. If you find yourself getting the 0 first, you're going to wind up changing previous zeros that you've already changed to something other than a 0, and you'll wind up going in a circle. When you move from column to column, the first thing you always get is the leading 1. So, right here, where that negative 15 is, that should be a 1. So what am I going to divide row 2 by in order to get a 1? Negative 15. So we could say it like this. Negative 1 over 15 times row 2 equals a new row 2. Or if you just want to say row 2 divided by negative 15. However you want to write it. This just, if you were actually able to do this out by hand, you would make notes to yourself so you know what you were doing. Okay. So I'm recopying rows 1 and 3 am going to, I don't know why it all looks so dark today. Oh, I think I made it dark. It'll look better on YouTube. Okay, so I'm dividing by negative 15. 0 divided by negative 15. Negative 15 divided by negative 15 is a positive 1. Negative 45 divided by negative 15 is a positive 3. 0 divided by negative 15 is 0. We now have the leading 1 in the second column. We got to zero out the 2 columns. So, or not the 2 columns, these 2's. We need a 0 here and a 0 here. So, I'm going to multiply row 2 doing the first one. What would this blue 1 need to be so that when I added it to row 1, I'd get a 0? Like right now, if I added it together, I wouldn't get a 0 right here, would I? I'd get, what, a negative 1? So I'm going to need to multiply row 2 by what? To get a 0, where the negative 2 is 2. Okay? To get zeros, you change the sign. Okay? I'm multiplying row 2 by a positive 2, and then I'll add it to row 1. 2 times the blue 0. Oh, let me start. Okay. So 2 times the blue 0 is 0 plus 1. Notice this first column won't change if you're doing it correctly. 2 times 1 is 2 minus 2 is 0. That's getting you the 0 you need. 2 times 3 is 6 plus 4, 10. 2 times 0 is 0 plus 6 is 6. I'm trying to get 0 out the second column. That's the terminology. I've got the leading 1. Now 0 it out. Everything else should be zeros. Now I haven't written out the operation I'm going to do to get a 0 where this pink 2 is. To get a 0 where this pink 2 is, what would I need to multiply this blue 1 by? Not another positive 2, but by a negative 2. Sometimes at this point, students will say, well, wait a minute. Why don't we just add this one and this one together? Well, if you do, that'll get you a 0 there, but what would it get you right here? If you added this one, it'd get you a 1 there. Okay, now you've got a 1 you got to get rid of. If you find yourself not using the row that has the leading 1 to get a 0, you're going to wind up going in a circle. Okay? So, negative 2 times 0 is 0, plus 0 is 0. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2, plus 2 is 0. That's the 0 we were trying to get. Negative 2 times 3 is negative 6, plus 7 is 1. Negative 2 times the blue 0 is 0, plus 2 is 2. Okay? We're finished with the second column. And it's time to move on to the third column, which, oh wow, we got kind of lucky. Am I going to have to do any dividing to get the 1 here? Well, no, there's already a 1 there. So we already have a 1 where we need it. Remember, we want 1s down the diagonals, 0s everywhere else. So we already have a 1. So let's write out the operations. What are we going to have to multiply? Oops. What are we going to have to multiply this pink 1 by if I want a 0 where this 10 is? Not positive 10, but negative 10. All right? Negative 10 times row 3. That would put a negative 10 here. Add it to row 1 to get a new row 1. And to get a 0 here where the blue 3 is, I'll have to multiply the pink 1 by what? Not positive 3, but negative 3. Plus row 2 equals row 2. So, okay, so getting started with the row 1. Oh, I'm doing this operation to get the new row 1. Negative 10 times pink 0 plus black 1. Ooh, let me lift that up. Black 1. Negative 10 times pink 0 plus black 0, 0. Negative 10 times pink 1 plus 10. That's getting you the 0 that you needed there. Negative 10 times pink 2 is negative 20 plus 6. Is that going to be a negative 14? Any questions on how I got those numbers? Y'all following how I'm moving it around? Now what about the blue row? Negative 3 times pink 0 plus blue 0 better be 0. These two columns had better not change. Okay? The ones that you've already finished, where you got the 1 and the 0. If you find it changing, then you're doing unnecessary work. You're making it harder for yourself. So negative 3 times 0 is 0 plus 1. Notice that blue 1 stayed a 1. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3 plus 3. There's the 0 we need. Negative 3 times pink 2 would be negative 6 plus 0 is negative 6. Oh, well, that 20 short years was pretty short. This was shorter than I thought it was going to be. The third row is already done. So our variables were x, y, and z. So could y'all write out the solutions? This first equation, the first row tells us x equals negative 14. What's the second one? Y equals negative 6. And z is 2. Okay. We were fortunate that this didn't have a whole lot of messy fractions. Okay. Any questions on any of these operations? Y'all see how I'm coming up with these? How to get the zeros? Because that's stuff you're going to have to do in the homework and ultimately on the test. Okay, well, thanks for watching. We're finished with this one. It was rude not to have any fractions, in case you wonder. I spent some time coming up with one that wouldn't have fractions as we worked through it. Okay?